You've had a lot of success. Is there anything common to all of it?
Well, listening is core to everything. If you're going to achieve anything, you have to listen. You have to be open and hear what's going on in your environment with other people. And I think there are different kinds of listening. Most people are familiar with listening for the gap, where as someone is speaking at you, you're listening for the spot, the gap in the conversation where they're taking a breath that you can actually say the thing you want to say. And I don't think that's listening at all, but that's what a lot of people do. And then a lot of people listen to judge. So they sit there and all the time they're actually listening to their own thoughts in their head about what someone's saying, not really hearing what the other person's saying, but they're forming a judgment nevertheless. And I don't think that's listening at all either. And then finally there's the sympathy listen, where you're not listening at all, but you look like you're listening because you know the other person's just in some kind of trauma and they have to get it out. And again, not listening at all. I'm a great believer in listening to recreate. That is, really listening to someone, not just with your ears, but with your eyes, so that you can hear not your thoughts about them, but you can recreate in your own body the sensations and the thoughts and the feelings of the person in front of you. And I believe that you can actually do that even as you're speaking. You can actually listen to how you're being heard as you speak. But more importantly, if you just listen and really recreate and suspend your judgments and all those other things, you get a connectedness with someone that you don't get otherwise, and you really get to hear what's going on. And that skill is hugely powerful in any organization. It's an entrepreneurial skill.
Can you give me an example?
If I am doing anything, if I'm selling, for instance, something, or if I'm promoting something, if I'm promoting We Forest as a charity, I am in front of someone, maybe speaking to them, and I'm listening with my eyes to whether I've got them with me or whether they've gone somewhere. I'm listening with my eyes to whether they've agreed with what I've just said or whether they're disputing it and are about to say something else. And I'm then listening to whatever it is they have to say completely. There is another kind of listening, and that's listening to create. And that's much harder to master. It's also quite hard to explain. That's where you've listened to recreate, and then you've created an intention in your listening. So it's like you want something to happen, and you keep asking questions until that thing occurs. But it's not like you've directed it. It's not like you said, right, you do this. It's more asking someone, getting them to fully explain where they are, what they're feeling, what they're doing, and guiding them gently with questions and listening to the state that you want them in to actually do the thing that you want, and that you come up with together. And that takes a lot of patience, but it's the only way really to get someone to shift from one solid point of view to something that might be workable.
Can you give me an example of doing that?
Yeah, I've done it many times. I remember there was one particular employee that I had who had become very, very recalcitrant. She'd become argumentative with other people. She was suddenly, from being a very top performer, she was been totally disrupted, and I couldn't figure out why. And at the office party I met her new boyfriend, and it became immediately apparent why she had gone off the rails so badly. And this guy was what I call a problem generator, someone who really likes to destroy productivity, and he's always putting people down. And one thing for sure, if you're in a team and you put down one member of your team, you're actually bringing the whole team down a notch. And so if you have someone in your team who's being put down all the time, it actually affects the whole rest of the team. And I just sat with her and I just listened and listened. My intention was the thing I wanted to create was her questioning her environment at home, because she hadn't been. She was in love and all the rest of it. And I just listened and listened and listened with this one intention, but really just listening carefully. And eventually we got to the question of really, so, how does he make you feel, really? And at that point, she then created a new beginning for herself in that relationship. And actually that was the end of the relationship. Eventually she realized that she was being disempowered by this person. And that was created out of listening. It wasn't me saying, right, you've got to break up with him, which would have been wrong. It was me being a space for her to really examine whether this was a benefit to her or not. And that actually worked out very well for her, even though she even didn't stay with the company. She went on to do other great things.
So what can happen when people don't listen to each other?
I was in a room with two CEOs, both with very large egos, and both with a deal on the table that would have made them both significantly more wealthy. And simply because they just wouldn't listen to each other, no deal happened. And it would have been good for them, it would have been good for their shareholders, it would have been good for everyone. And one guy in particular just would not back down from his position, and he wouldn't hear any argument. And when you're not heard, you just want to walk with your feet.